I can't stand him. That's how it started. That exact sentence. Like a quiet stab delivered over coffee and shallow laughter, floating through the half-open hallway door I forgot to close behind me. She didn't know I was home. She didn't know I was standing there still holding the sandwich I had made for her, wrapped in wax paper with a small note tucked inside. You've been working so hard lately. I'm proud of you. I stood there for 7 seconds before I blinked. She was sitting at the kitchen island with someone I didn't recognize, maybe from work. He were the kind of watch you don't buy on impulse. His fingers rested too casually on the edge of her coffee mug. She didn't pull away. I swear it's like living with a shadow, she continued. He moves around the house so quietly. I keep hoping one day he just won't come back. They laughed like it was a shared joke between war buddies. She leaned in. I mean, honestly, I don't think he's ever noticed I stopped saying I love you 2 years ago. My legs didn't move. My throat made a sound I didn't recognize. Not a cough, not a sob. More like a whimper swallowed too fast. I walked backward, my own footsteps sounding foreign on the hardwood floor. She didn't notice. By the time I reached the door, I was no longer carrying the sandwich. I had set it down somewhere. Maybe the hallway table, maybe the stairs. Doesn't matter. I got in my car and drove aimlessly for over an hour. No music, just the sound of tires on a pavement and the occasional turn signal that felt too loud. She had said it so effortlessly, like she'd rehearsed it, like she'd said it before. Maybe to other people, maybe to him, maybe to herself. I didn't go to a friend's place. I didn't go to a bar. I didn't go anywhere someone might ask how I was doing. Instead, I found myself parked behind an abandoned grocery store where they used to sell fried donuts on Saturdays. The windows were boarded up now. The sign was faded. It looked like something that used to matter, kind of like me. I sat there for 6 hours. I don't even remember most of it. Just flashes. A cat crossing the parking lot. A couple kids skateboarding near the dumpster. One of them fell. The other laughed. And then I wrote her a message. Just one line. Thanks for confirming what I've felt for years. I turn off my phone. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't check into a hotel or plan anything at all. I simply didn't go home. And what she did after that, that's where things get strange. I didn't check the time, but the light had changed. That gray-blue shift where evening tries to settle in. But the streetlights aren't ready yet. I was still in the car, still behind the dead supermarket, and I still hadn't moved. My phone was face down in the passenger seat. I knew it had buzzed at least twice, maybe 3 times. I didn't care. I wasn't ready to read anything, especially not from her. There's a strange peace that comes when you're completely emptied. Like your body forgets how to expect anything. No sadness. Just the dull hum of being awake. I didn't cry. I didn't talk. I didn't even think. Not really. I just sat there with this odd stillness, like I was watching someone else's life slide off a cliff, and I happened to be in the front row. I wasn't avoiding confrontation. I just didn't believe in it anymore. What's the point of screaming when the person you're screaming had already stopped listening 2 years ago? I ended up driving north. No music. Just a map in my head that led nowhere in particular. I stopped for gas in a town I didn't recognize. A kid at the register offered me a discount card and smiled like I mattered. I almost thanked him too much. I found an old roadside motel, one of those places where the neon buzzes a little louder than the cars passing by. I paid in cash. Room 5. The key was actual metal, not a card. That felt honest somehow. I slept in my clothes on top of the blanket. I didn't dream. Just stare at the water-stained ceiling and tried to remember what the last thing she ever said to me with kindness was. It took me over an hour to recall something small from 4 months ago. "Thanks for getting the trash, Ev." That was it. That was the memory I held on to as I drifted in a half-sleep. Not "I love you," not "I miss you." Just a routine courtesy. The next morning, I turned my phone back on. 7 messages, 3 missed calls, all from her. The first one was just, "Where are you?" The second came 2 hours later. "Are you okay? Please answer." The third was shorter. "Seriously?" Then the tone shifted. "You're acting insane, Everett. Is this your idea of payback? You've always been dramatic. But this is pathetic. I have a meeting in an hour. I can't chase you." There it was. That familiar tone wrapped in a silk scarf of blame. She had made my vanishing about her, about how inconvenient it was, about how it interrupted her routine. I didn't respond. I just stared at the texts until the screen dimmed. I spent that day walking, no purpose, just drifting through the nearby town like a tourist in my own detachment. I ended up at a park bench watching ducks fight over a crust of bread. That's when I noticed something strange. My phone started ringing again, but this time it wasn't her. It was a number I didn't recognize. Local area code, no boy female, just 1 missed call. Then 15 minutes later, another from a different number, and then another. Something felt off. By late afternoon, I had 5 missed calls from unknown numbers. None repeating. I wasn't ready to believe anything yet. I figured maybe she had friends trying to reach me, but it didn't sit right, so I waited. Then at 7:42 p.m., a text came in from an unknown number. No name. "You don't know what she's done, Everett. She's not who you think she is." That one made my chest tighten. And I hadn't even begun to learn how deep it all went. I must have read that message 100 times before my thumb finally hovered over call. But I didn't press it. I wasn't sure why exactly. Maybe because I already knew that hearing someone's voice would make all this real. Or maybe because a small part of me, the last part of me, still clinging to some version of Tessa I once loved, didn't want to know just how far the rod had spread. The motel room was dark, except for the sickly orange glow from the lot outside. I hadn't turned on the lights. I didn't want to see my reflection in the mirror, the blank face of someone who had disappeared from his own life. At 11:03 p.m., a new text came in. Same number. "If you want to know who she really is, ask her about the red scarf in the storage unit." I stared at it so long my eyes blurred. A red scarf? Storage unit? That hit something. A faint memory I didn't even know was still there. Months ago, maybe longer, I remembered seeing a small key on her nightstand. I'd asked her what it was for. She'd said just old junk and changed the subject. I hadn't pushed. I never pushed. That was my role. Stay quiet. Don't intrude. Be grateful for what you have. So, I let it go. But now I was shaking. I didn't respond to the text. Instead, I quietly packed up the few things I brought. Charger, wallet, the same clothes I wore yesterday, and left the motel without checking out. I drove all night, not back to our house, but to a small commercial district in a nearby town where I remembered her mentioning she had design inventory stored. Back then, I thought it was fabric samples or in used furniture. At 3:24 a.m., I pulled up in front of a row of storage units behind a dentist office. Chain link fence, single light flickering over the keypad. I didn't know the unit number, I didn't know the code, but I sat there staring at that locked gate as the possibilities swirled in my head like leaves caught in a storm drain. I nearly turned around. But then I remembered something. She had given me a tax document 2 years ago to sign, a shared receipt from Eversecure Storage, with her name on the lease and my initials listed as a backup contact. I pulled it up in my email. There it was, Unit 108. That cold little number blinked at me like an open secret. I got out and approached the keypad. I tried her birthday, denied. I tried her anniversary, denied. Then on a whim, I typed 1212. Her lucky number, the one she used for everything from luggage codes to restaurant reservations. The gate clicked open. My palms were wet. Unit 108 was near the back, tucked into a corner. It looked like every other metal door on the row. I stared at it for a long moment, then reached out and pulled the handle. It opened. She hadn't even locked it. Inside, it was quiet, the kind of quiet that hums in your ears. There were shelves lined with boxes, some marked project files, others completely blank. And in the middle, half covered with a plastic sheet, sat a full-length mannequin draped over its shoulders with a red silk scarf. I stepped closer. The scarf was elegant, expensive perfumed, not her usual taste. And then I saw the tag. It wasn't a designer brand. It was from a small boutique in Vermont, one I remembered because I had taken her there during our 5th anniversary weekend. She had told me she hated the style. So why was it here? That's when I noticed something else. Taped behind the mannequin's neck was a photograph, small, bent at the corners. My hand shook as I peeled it free. In the photo, Tessa was smiling, standing in a hotel room wearing the same scarf. But she wasn't alone. A man's hand was wrapped tightly around her waist, half visible but unmistakably intimate. His watch, thick band, dark leather, was the same one I saw on the man in our kitchen. And next to them on the bed, just barely visible, was my notebook, the one I kept for sketches, the one I thought I lost a year ago. My vision tunneled. It was like every neuron in my head began firing in slow motion. I was looking at something I didn't understand, something that felt rehearsed, planned, even orchestrated. This wasn't a fling. This was something else. And I still didn't know who had sent the text. I didn't leave the storage unit right away. I couldn't. Something in my brain had locked up, like I'd been unplugged from everything I thought was real. That photograph didn't just show betrayal. It felt like a setup, carefully arranged. The scarf, the room, my notebook. Why was my notebook in that photo? That's what looped in my head over and over. I took the scarf, I folded the photo and put in my jacket. I backed out of the unit like I was afraid the walls would come alive and close in on me. I shut the metal door, but didn't lock it. I didn't want to touch anything else. Back in the car, I turned the engine, but didn't drive. My fingers hovered over the steering wheel, tapping lightly like they needed something to do while the rest of me short-circuited. I stared into the dark a lot, and finally checked my phone. Another text, same number. Now you're starting to see it. She's not just lying to you. She's been using you. Watch your mail. That was it. No name, no context. Just enough to make my stomach twist into a tight, cold knot. I didn't sleep that night. I drove aimlessly until dawn, ended up parked near a 24-hour laundromat just to sit under the flickering lights where I wouldn't feel alone in the dark. At sunrise, I finally returned to the one place I said I wouldn't. The house. I didn't go inside. I parked across the street and waited. At 7:14 a.m., Tessa came out, heels clicking across the pavement, coffee in hand, perfectly done up as always. She paused for a moment, looked left and right, then got in her car and drove off like nothing was wrong. No sadness, no panic, not even a trace of someone who thought their husband had vanished for 2 days. She hadn't called again. She hadn't reported anything. She hadn't even told her family. I waited until I was sure she was gone, then unlocked the back door with the key she always forgot I still had. The house looked untouched. Nothing packed. No signs of searching. On the kitchen counter, 2 wine glasses sat beside an empty bottle of red, the same brand from the afternoon. I overheard her. That same man had been here again. I opened the drawer beneath the stove where she kept important mail. It was neat, labeled, almost obsessive. She never let me near it. I found a stack of envelopes bound together with a red ribbon. One of those details that looked sweet from a distance, but felt surgical now. Inside her were contracts, letters, invoices, all addressed to a business name I didn't recognize. Flint and Laramie Holdings. I Googled it. Commercial real estate firm registered under her maiden name. Co-owner listed as Grant Laramie. I didn't know any Grant. I scrolled further. I stopped breathing. There was a photo on a local business site. A ribbon-cutting event for a new boutique condo building downtown. There she was. Tessa smiling next to a tall man with a heavy leather watch and a champagne fluid in his hand. The same man from the kitchen. The same man from the storage unit photo. His arm was around her waist in every picture. Public, shameless. And I was nowhere. Not even a thank you mention. I walked through the rest of the house like a ghost. My side of the closet had fewer shirts than I remembered. My books were missing from the shelf. My laptop wasn't in its usual place. I opened the bedroom nightstand drawer, the one I hadn't looked in for months, empty, as if I'd never lived there at all. It hit me then. She hadn't just stopped loving me. She had been slowly, methodically erasing me, like I was a phase, a placeholder, a distraction, until the real plan kicked in. I dropped to the floor in the hallway and sat there until I heard the distant rumble of her car returning. I didn't move. I didn't panic. I just quietly slipped out the back and left the door unlocked behind me. That evening, as the sky went dim and the city lit up around me, I checked the mailbox at the motel I'd moved to. Inside was a single manila envelope. No return address. I opened it with numb fingers. Inside was a printed email chain. Subject line, he'll never see it coming. The first line of the first email, we start the paperwork next week. Once the trust is in my name, he's done. The email chain inside the envelope didn't have names, just initials. TG, but I didn't need to guess. The language gave it away. I've kept everything surface level with him. Just like we planned, he still thinks the trust fund is frozen. Poor thing still checks the balance like it matters. I didn't know whether I wanted to scream or fall apart. But I didn't either. I sat back against the motel headboard, that thin printed email trembling in my hand, and let it sink in. She wasn't just tired of me. She was using me. Not emotionally, not romantically, financially. It suddenly made sense. The timing, the things she used to ask me to sign without looking. It's just tax stuff, she'd say. You don't want to deal with this boring paperwork, do you? And I didn't. I never did. I trusted her. God, how stupid that sounds now. I pulled up my laptop and opened my banking login. I hadn't checked the trust account in a long time. It was something I inherited from my grandmother. Not huge, but significant enough that it had always been our safety net. The kind of money you don't touch unless something goes terribly wrong. Except it was nearly empty. The number on the screen made my hands go ice cold. 212.74. The last withdrawal was made a week ago. Labeled LL Holdings Consolidation, LL Laram and Laramie. I started sweating. Another message came in. Same unknown number. Now, do you believe me? This time I didn't hesitate. I called. 2 rings, then silence. Then a voicemail. Come direct. I told you to watch your mail, he said. I swallowed. Who are you? He chuckled, but there was no joy in it. Let's just say I've seen the same movie, different cast, same ending. What do you want from me? I don't want anything. I want you to stop sleepwalking while they dig your grave. My throat tightened. Why are you helping me? He paused, because I didn't get the warning in time. You still can. Then he hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at my reflection in the black screen of my phone, not even angry anymore, just emptied, not even surprised. She had been preparing this quietly, like renovating a house while the tenants still lived inside. And now I was beginning to wonder how much of me was ever even real to her. Was our marriage just a disguise? Was I the insurance policy for a better life she never intended to share? At 1:42 a.m., unable to sleep, I drove back toward the city, not to confront her, but to confirm one more thing. I parked outside the condo building from the website, the one from the ribbon-cutting photo. It was high-end, all glass and steel, lit up like a jewel box in the dark. I waited. At 2:19 a.m., I saw them. She exited through the side entrance, heels in her hand, laughing softly. He followed the man from the photo, Grant Laramie, if that really was his name. Sharp blazer, that same damn watch. His hand slid down her back as she leaned into him. She didn't look guilty. She looked glowing, like she had finally stepped into the life she wanted and left the old one folded and discarded like a laundry receipt in her pocket. She didn't know I was watching. She didn't know I saw everything. And even if she had, I doubt she would have cared. I could have called her name. I could have walked right up and asked her how long she had been planning to erase me. But I didn't. Instead, I turned away and did something I never thought I would do. I went to the courthouse, and I filed for access to every document she'd ever made me sign. Power of attorney, trust accounts, property titles. The clerk raised her eyebrows and asked, "You're just now looking into this?" I nodded like a man waking up in someone else's body. And then she handed me the file. What I found inside made my skin crawl. One of the deeds signed 6 months ago had transferred ownership of our shared condo. Not to her, but to her new company, signed by her and co-signed by me. Except I never signed it. Not that one, not ever. And the signature, it looked close. Too close. The signature on the deed wasn't mine. I knew that the second I saw it. It mimicked my pen pressure, curved my art just enough to fool someone unfamiliar, but not me. I stared at it for what felt like hours, waiting for the clerk to say something like, "Sorry, that was misfiled," or "Wait, this isn't valid." But no correction came. Just the sound of the clock ticking and the occasional shuffle of paper from behind the glass. I signed over our home without signing anything. When I asked who processed it, the clerk gave me a name I didn't recognize, a junior notary at a small firm downtown. I asked for their number. She wrote it on a sticky note and said, "You'll want to move fast." Real estate fraud cases get messy if you wait. Messy. That was one word for it. I left the courthouse with that awful tightness in my chest again. The same feeling I had when I first overheard her in the kitchen. Like falling without movement, like you know you're dropping, but gravity hasn't caught up yet. I sat in my car outside the building and stared at the notary's number. I didn't call it. Instead, I opened my email and searched my inbox using one word: signature. I scrolled through the results, and that's when it hit me. There were multiple scanned PDFs from Tessa over the last year, all labeled things like Doc Final or Agreement Nurse Score signed. Stuff I never opened, stuff I just approved like a fool because she told me it was all routine. I opened one at random. It was a power of attorney form. It had my name, my digital signature, time-stamped, but I didn't remember signing it. And then I noticed something deeply disturbing. In the metadata hidden beneath the document was a creation tag document created by G. Laram. She hadn't forged my signature. He had. I felt sick, the kind of sick that starts in your spine and spreads. My stomach curled up like it was bracing for an impact I hadn't even seen coming yet. They've been planning this together, and I was their convenient puppet. Emotionally disconnected, easily dismissed, passive, predictable. The kind of man who didn't ask questions. The kind of man who signed things. I tried to stand. My legs nearly gave out. Somehow, I ended up walking. I don't even remember how far. My phone buzzed twice in my pocket. I ignored it. I passed people on the sidewalk, but I wasn't really there. I was back in our kitchen hearing her laugh, watching her stir coffee while casually erasing me from my own life. I stopped near a bookstore and ducked inside, pretending to browse just to keep from collapsing in public. That's when I heard my name, Everett. I froze. The voice was soft, unfamiliar, but spoke with certainty. I turned slowly. A woman stood a few feet away, early 40s, maybe younger, dark hair pulled back, no makeup, but her eyes burned with purpose. She was holding a small purse against her chest, like a shield. "I didn't mean to scare you," she said, stepping closer. "I've never met, but we have something in common." I blinked. "I'm sorry. Do I know you?" She shook her head gently. "No, but I knew her. Tessa years ago, and I made the same mistake you did." I felt the world tilt slightly under my feet. "What are you talking about?" I asked. She looked down. I was the first. I couldn't speak. "She and Grant, they've done this before," she said quietly. "Different cities, different setups, always the same method. Target someone with decent assets, build trust, isolate, manipulate, then extract everything and move on before you realize what's missing." "No," I said, my voice barely audible. "No, that's not. This can't be real." She pulled something from her purse, a wedding photo. There was Tessa, younger, longer hair, wearing a dress I'd never seen, standing next to a man who wasn't me. The man looked eerily similar to Grant, but older. A brother, maybe. She married him in Denver 2 years before you. He's gone now. Not dead. Just disappeared. Same as you almost did. My mouth went dry. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I wish someone had warned him. Because I saw your name on a court filing last week and I knew what was coming next." I looked at her lost. "What is coming next?" She paused, and then she said something that chilled me more than anything I'd seen in that courthouse file. "They don't stop once the money's gone. They ruin you. It's how they cover their tracks. If you don't act now, they'll make you look like the criminal." The word criminal echoed in my head long after Erin left. She gave me her number, a quiet handshake, and a warning not to go back to the house under any circumstances. Then she disappeared into the crowd, like someone who had already lived a life. I was only beginning to wake up inside. I didn't move for a while. I just stood there near the bookstore, trying to remember how I used to breathe before all of this. Every part of my life felt unfamiliar now. My name, my signature, my house, even my memories didn't feel like mine anymore. What Aaron said kept looping through my mind. They don't stop when the money's gone. It explained everything. The way Tessa had remained so calm, so composed. How she never panicked when I vanished. She expected me to vanish. She was counting on it. And if I hadn't overheard her that day in the kitchen, I would have walked straight into the trap she was building. But now I was off script, and that made me dangerous. That night, I didn't go back to the motel. I didn't use my credit card. I left my phone in a convenience store restroom and drove 4 towns over in a rental I paid for in cash. I needed time, and I needed to become as invisible as they assumed I already was. At sunrise, I met with a lawyer recommended by someone in Aaron's network. His name was Claude, retired, sharp-eyed, and disillusioned. He wore old suits and spoke slowly, like every word had been previously weighed and measured. After I laid everything out, the fake signatures, the forged documents, the trust account, the co-sign transfers, he didn't flinch. "First question," he said, folding his hands. "Do you have any proof your signature was forged?" I nodded. "I never signed that deed. I never authorized those withdrawals." He raised an eyebrow. "Have you told anyone official?" "No, just you." "Good. Don't." That threw me. "What?" He leaned forward. "This isn't just fraud. It's identity manipulation. You tell the wrong person too soon and they'll flip the narrative. Make you look unstable, vindictive. They'll drag your credibility through the mud while they polish theirs with smiles and wine glasses. But she's the one." "I know," he interrupted gently. "And that's exactly why it's going to be hard." He opened a file drawer behind him, pulled out a document, and slid it across the table. "What's this?" I asked. "Case number from a man in Albany. Same pattern, same couple." He came forward too late. Police believed her. He lost his license, his job, and nearly got indicted for stalking. I stared at the page. It was real and terrifying. Claude sighed and tapped the table once with his knuckles. "You need 2 things," he said. "Evidence that holds in court and someone willing to back your story who doesn't have her last name." I thought of Aaron immediately. Then Claude said something that made my stomach clench. "You also need to prepare for the next step." "What next step?" He didn't blink. "The part where they file a restraining order against you." The words hit harder than I expected. Not because it surprised me, but because it sounded exactly like something Tessa would do. Turn the narrative. Control the frame. Make me the unhinged one. The man who ran away, who came back angry, accusing, unstable. The pieces were already in place. She'd been setting this up long before I knew I was in a game. Claude told me to gather every scrap of evidence. Voice messages, emails, text logs, receipts, and document every interaction going forward. "You're not just building a case," he said. "You're protecting your name." I left his office with a checklist that felt like armor. Then I made a mistake. I checked my email. At the top was a message from Tessa. Just 5 words. "Where are you hiding, Everett?" There was no warmth in the words, no curiosity, just cold inquiry, like a hunter tracking a deer. I deleted it without replying. The next morning, I found something under the door at my motel, a plain white envelope. Inside, a printed notice from her lawyer. Emergency petition for a protection order, claiming I had been stalking, threatening, and harassing her since I disappeared without warning. Photos were attached, blurry screenshots of her phone with missed calls, old texts, even an out-of-context email from me written 2 years ago during a rough patch where I had said, "I don't know what I'd do if I lost you." She was using it to paint me as unstable, a potential threat, someone dangerous. It was all lies, but in print it looked convincing, especially when the system doesn't know who to believe, especially when she was already 3 steps ahead. I stared at the document for a long time, my heart pounding like a drum against my ribs. She wasn't trying to win. She was trying to erase me completely and make sure when she was finished, there wouldn't be anyone left who'd even remember my side of the story. I didn't sleep that night. The protection order was scheduled for a hearing in 5 days. 5 days to prepare, to gather documents, to unearth every paper trail I had once been too trusting or too afraid to look at. And in those 5 days, something inside me shifted. Not anger, not revenge, just resolve. I wasn't going to let her rewrite my story. So I went back to the places she thought I'd avoid. To banks, offices, even her former business associates. I showed them documents. I asked questions no one expected me to ask. Some people looked at me like I was a ghost. One man, a former co-investor her design firm, actually said, "I always thought you were just a quiet husband." Exactly. That's how she wanted me remembered. Quiet, forgettable, replaceable, but not anymore. Aaron helped me draft the statement. Claude gathered files. And with every new piece of evidence, the story she had built began to fall apart. One lie at a time. We found inconsistencies in her financial declarations, irregularities in the notorizations, emails that prove coordination with Grant behind the scenes, including one damning calendar invite where they scheduled a document rehearsal. Even her restraining order started to look suspicious. Her timeline didn't match. Her screenshots were incomplete. Her statements contradicted her own digital activity. And then, just 2 days before the hearing, I received a phone call from Claude that stopped me cold. "She's pulling out." "What?" "She's dropped the petition, filed a motion to dismiss. No explanation." I didn't speak. "She's panicking," Claude said calmly. "She knows we're closing in." The day after that, her lawyer called to negotiate. They offered silence in exchange for a full financial release. Essentially, a quiet settlement with no charges filed. Claude gave me a long look across the table. "You can walk away now," he said. "Clear your name, reclaim your assets, and be done with her." I didn't need to think about it. I agreed on one condition. She had to sign a legal admission that she had forged my signature on the property transfer. No criminal confession, no media, just a sealed record, but one that protected me if she ever came after me again. She signed. That was the last time I heard her name in a legal document. It took 2 months, but I got the house back. The trust account was flagged for investigation, and while some funds were lost, most were frozen and returned. Grant Laramie disappeared from the business entirely. According to Aaron, that was part of their routine. Once caught, he vanished into another alias, another city, another mark. I spent a while living in that house again, alone. Not because I was clinging to the past, but because I needed to walk through the silence and make it mine again. I opened the blinds. I painted the walls. I tossed every wine glass we owned and bought mismatched coffee mug from a thrift shop just to make the place feel lived in, not designed. One afternoon, I stood in the kitchen, the same kitchen where I first heard her say she couldn't stand me, and realized something strange. I didn't feel invisible anymore. I felt present. I wasn't the man she tried to erase. I was the man who survived it. Weeks later, I got a postcard from Aaron. No return address, just 4 words written across a mountain landscape. You rewrote the ending.